Rebuilding the massive jet engines that power the United States Air Force's largest aircraft isn't just a job. It's a mission of engineering precision, mechanical artistry, and national defense readiness at its finest. Deep inside the hangars and overhaul facilities of the Air Force, where the air is thick with the scent of aviation oil and metal shavings, a silent war is waged daily, not against a foreign adversary, but against where time, stress, and the brutal demands of combat aviation. At the heart of this effort are the men and women of the Air Force's engine maintenance teams, elite specialists whose hands restore the pounding hearts of aircraft like the B-52 Stratofortress, C-5M Super Galaxy, and KC-135 Stratotanker. These aren't your average car engines. We're talking about power plants like the TF-33, F-117, and F-108 engines, giant, fire-breathing turbines that suck in thousands of pounds of air per second, compress it, ignite it, and shoot out the back with raw, unrelenting power. When these beasts wear down after thousands of flight hours, they're not simply replaced. They're meticulously rebuilt in a process that borders on surgical. It all begins with teardown. The engines are transported from air bases around the world to specialized maintenance depots like the Oklahoma City Air Logistics Complex at Tinker Air Force Base, where technicians carefully disassemble each unit piece by piece. Every component is cataloged, photographed, and analyzed, because even the smallest crack in a turbine blade or hairline fracture in a compressor shaft can mean catastrophe in flight. Advanced inspection techniques are used: X-ray scans, ultrasonic analysis, dye-penetrant inspections, and laser surface mapping, ensuring no defect goes unnoticed. If a part is found beyond repair, it's replaced, but the goal is restoration, not waste. Next comes cleaning, a deep decontamination and stripping process that removes decades of built-up grime, soot, and corrosion. Acid baths, high-pressure air guns, and chemical treatments are used to bring components back to bare metal. After cleaning comes machining and refurbishment. Damaged surfaces are ground down, welded, and refinished. High-tech CNC machines restore exact tolerances to within thousandths of an inch. Combustion chambers are relined with heat-resistant coatings. Rotors are rebalanced with micrometer precision. This is where art meets science, where human skill merges with robotic accuracy. And then there's reassembly, a painstaking dance where every part must fit perfectly, where every bolt is torqued to exact specification, and every bearing is seated just right. These engines can contain over 10,000 individual components, and every one of them must be flawless. During this phase, technicians work in climate-controlled clean rooms wearing gloves and goggles, ensuring no foreign object or contaminant sneaks its way into the engine's core. After reassembly, the engine isn't rushed back into service. It faces a test stand. In massive concrete bunkers, the rebuilt engines are locked down and fired up, mimicking real-world flight conditions. Sensors measure temperatures, pressures, fuel flow, vibration, and thrust output in real time. If even a single anomaly is detected, the engine is shut down, diagnosed, and adjusted. Only after passing rigorous testing and multiple inspection checkpoints is the engine deemed airworthy. But the story doesn't end there. Every rebuilt engine carries with it a complete digital history, a maintenance log embedded with sensor data, technician notes, and service records, all part of the Air Force's predictive maintenance program. With AI-based analytics and condition-based monitoring, commanders can now anticipate failures before they occur, keeping jets flying longer, safer, and smarter. This data-centric approach marks a revolution in military aviation logistics. And it's not just about making them work again. It's about making them better. Many rebuilds also include upgrades. Older engines are retrofitted with improved materials, better cooling systems, noise reduction tech, and fuel efficiency enhancements. For instance, the F-117 engine, which powers the C-17 Globemaster III, is being fitted with updated fan blades that reduce drag and increase airflow. In some cases, entire engine types are being redesigned from the inside out, merging Cold War-era architecture with cutting-edge 21st century innovation. And who are the unsung heroes behind all this? Not just engineers and technicians, but machinists, logisticians, metallurgists, test pilots, software analysts, and quality assurance specialists, often veterans themselves, now serving the mission from the maintenance bay instead of the cockpit. These teams work around the clock, often in grueling conditions, facing tight deadlines and mission-critical demands. A grounded B-52 might mean a missed sortie, a delay in reconnaissance, or a break in strategic deterrence. So, every wrench turn and every engine cycle is a matter of national importance. But rebuilding these engines isn't only about hardware. It's about trust. Trust that when a pilot climbs into that cockpit and throttles forward, the engine will respond with thunderous certainty. Trust that in a crisis, whether it's over the Pacific or in the Arctic, that engine won't falter. Trust that behind every mission flown, there's a maintenance warrior who gave their all. The scale of this operation is staggering. Tinker AFB alone overhauls thousands of engines annually, supporting more than 30% of all U.S. Air Force propulsion systems. And it's not stopping anytime soon. With growing tensions around the globe and the demand for rapid mobility and persistent air power at an all-time high, the need for reliable, high-performance engines is critical. From bombers on nuclear alert to tankers fueling jets in midair and cargo giants hauling troops and aid across continents, the heartbeat of American air dominance lies in its engines. And when those engines get tired, America doesn't replace them. It rebuilds them. Stronger, smarter. Ready? So, the next time you see a massive U.S. Air Force jet roaring into the sky, know this. Behind that deafening roar is a story of quiet dedication, technical brilliance, and unshakable commitment. It's a story of how the biggest jet engines are not just maintained, but resurrected. Because in the Air Force, nothing is too big to be fixed, only too important to fail. And that's how the United States Air Force rebuilds the biggest jet engines in the world. One bolt, one turbine, one drop of sweat at a time. But to truly understand the magnitude of rebuilding the U.S. Air Force's biggest jet engines, we have to look beyond the hangars, beyond the wrench turns and test stands, and into the vast, global machinery that keeps these giants in the sky. These engines are more than mechanical marvels. They're logistical miracles, backed by a supply chain that stretches from the desert of Arizona to the factories of Ohio, from classified black sites deep within the Nevada test and training range to forward-deployed maintenance hubs in Europe and the Indo-Pacific. Every component, every sensor, every specialized alloy must arrive on time, on spec, and in sync with an intricate maintenance timetable. Because rebuilding an engine isn't just about putting the parts together. It's about orchestrating a global ballet of steel, silicon, and sweat. Titanium fan blades forged in Pennsylvania might be shipped to precision grinders in Texas, then flown to Tinker Air Force Base for final assembly. Meanwhile, custom avionics chips manufactured under strict security protocols are delivered via escorted convoys or military transport to prevent tampering. Even fuel lines, seemingly simple parts, undergo rigorous testing and certification to withstand not just high pressures, but also electromagnetic interference and chemical corrosion. And while many civilians see only the flying wing or sleek fuselage of a jet, the reality is this. The engine is where the real power lies. It's the one system that determines speed, altitude, climb rate, fuel range, and even stealth signature. That's why American engine rebuild operations aren't just about maintenance. They're about military supremacy. Every F-108 or TF-33 rebuilt to perfection means one more C, 5M Galaxy, can carry 280,000 pounds of gear across the planet. Every flawless F-117 means another C, 17 Globemaster 3, can launch from a dirt strip in Africa and land in the Arctic. Every time an upgraded engine roars back to life, it sends a clear message to adversaries. American air power is relentless, persistent, and impossible to ground. What's more, these rebuilds don't just preserve power, they evolve it. In today's technological arms race, the Air Force isn't content with rebuilding old engines to old specs. Instead, they're constantly integrating next-generation technologies mid-cycle. Take adaptive cycle engines, for example, 3-stream turbines that adjust airflow dynamically to balance speed and fuel efficiency. Though not yet standard on legacy bombers, early elements of this technology are being quietly embedded into rebuilds as test cases. Even older platforms like the B-52 are being fitted with completely new engines. The commercial-based Rolls-Royce F-130S, set to replace the aging TF-33S after 60 years of service. But before that swap happens, the existing engines still need to perform flawlessly, and that means rebuild teams are pushing aging machinery beyond Cold War limits using 21st century tools. Additive manufacturing, 3D printing of engine components, is now being used to fabricate rare or discontinued parts that can no longer be sourced. Laser cladding is used to reinforce worn turbine blades, creating harder-than-steel coatings. AI-assisted diagnostics compare thousands of engine performance datasets to recommend tiny tweaks that yield massive gains. And cybersecurity has entered the game as well. With smart engines increasingly connected to onboard computers and external networks, safeguarding the digital integrity of these systems has become just as critical as protecting their mechanical guts. In many cases, rebuilt engines now include embedded cybersecurity chips that detect tampering, encrypt data, and self-isolate if compromised, transforming a hunk of metal into a smart, secure, mission-ready warfighter. Let's not forget the role of field maintenance crews. While depot-level rebuilds happen at dedicated facilities, countless unsung heroes perform mini-rebuilds in theater, on flight lines in the Middle East, aboard aircraft carriers in Pacific, or in hastily erected forward operating bases. With mobile engine diagnostic tools, modular part kits, and sometimes sheer grit, these teams keep engines running under fire. Whether it's swapping out a compressor stage on the tarmac at Al Udeid Air Base or repairing fuel injection issues at an undisclosed airstrip in Eastern Europe, these warriors are the first responders of the skies. Their motto is simple: if the engine doesn't roar, the mission doesn't launch. And let's talk scale. The U.S. Air Force operates thousands of aircraft, with each large jet often using 4 engines. That means tens of thousands of massive turbine engines across the fleet, each needing service records, tracking, and scheduled rebuilds. This volume demands not just skill, but strategy. The Air Force uses enterprise-level tracking software and digital twins, virtual models of each engine that evolve as the real engine undergoes wear and upgrades. These twins are fed data from onboard sensors, maintenance logs, and test stand outputs, enabling predictive analysis that can flag a failing bearing before it ever makes noise. This is no longer just maintenance. It's military-grade machine learning with life or death implications. The people who make this happen are some of the most highly trained in the Department of Defense. Many are veterans who transition from active duty flight lines to civilian technician roles, carrying their expertise into a new battlefield, the one against mechanical failure. They undergo constant training, often classified, to stay ahead of both natural wear and hostile threats. Because make no mistake, engine sabotage and foreign tech infiltration are real threats. That's why some rebuild zones are hardened against espionage, with biometric entry, encrypted tooling systems, and secure comms protocols. There are even black teams within the engine rebuild world, specially cleared personnel who work on classified engine variants for aircraft that don't officially exist. These engines may be prototypes for 6th-generation stealth jets, hypersonic bombers, or space-capable platforms, and their rebuild programs are locked tighter than any vault. Their test stands are buried in secretive test ranges like Area 51 or the Tonopah Test Range, where even the sounds of the engines are masked by sound-dampening structures or buried chambers. Some of these engines incorporate exotic materials, experimental fuels, or thermal cloaking systems, and while most of the world will never see them, they exist, roaring in the silence of the desert night, rebuilt by the finest minds in aerospace history. Meanwhile, public-facing rebuild programs continue to push the limits of longevity. The KC-135's F-108 engine, a military version of the CFM-56, has seen thousands of overhauls and remains the workhorse of aerial refueling. These engines are being retrofitted with digital engine control systems that allow for smoother operation, better throttle response, and more efficient burns. Older analog engines, once limited by manual throttle linkages, now benefit from computer control modulation, giving pilots more responsive and stable flight profiles. In real-world missions, this translates to fuel saved, time gained, and lives protected. All of this contributes to a simple truth. No nation on Earth has the engine rebuilding capability of the United States Air Force. While other air forces rely heavily on outsourcing or limited overhaul cycles, the U.S. has invested in building a sovereign ecosystem, one that can rebuild, improve, and innovate independently. That's why, even as newer airframes like the B-21 Raider come online with brand new propulsion systems, the rebuild operations behind them are already being prepared. Infrastructure is being scaled. Digital systems are being aligned. Human capital is being trained. Because in air power, as in war, the future belongs to those who prepare today. In the final analysis, rebuilding these enormous engines isn't just about thrust, steel, and speed. It's about deterrence. When America sends a flight of B-52s over the Korean Peninsula or surges C-17s into Eastern Europe, it's not just about presence. It's about promise. A promise that those engines and the power they represent will not fail. That they will roar through storm and fire. That they have been rebuilt not just to fly, but to dominate. And they have. Time and again, from Vietnam to the Gulf, from Afghanistan to the South China Sea, rebuilt engines have hauled America's might across the skies and struck fear into those who would challenge her. And as global threats rise and the need for air power grows, the rebuilding of these giants continues, quiet, relentless, unstoppable. Because the United States does not wait for problems to arise. It prepares. It adapts. It rebuilds. And in that rebuilding, it finds not just renewed engines, but renewed strength, renewed deterrence, and renewed dominance in the skies. The story doesn't end with the roar of an engine on a test stand or the final torque of a bolt deep inside an airbase in Oklahoma. It continues wherever America's boots touch down, wherever a flag flies high, and wherever threats lurk in the skies above, because the rebuilt engines of the U.S. Air Force are not museum pieces. They are war fighters in their own right, forged in heat, rebuilt with unmatched precision, and designed to outfly and outfight any threat that dares to challenge American dominance. And to truly grasp the scale and intensity of these rebuilds, one has to look at the tactical reality unfolding around the world. Because every rebuilt engine becomes a piece of an airborne chessboard where U.S. strategy is constantly evolving to counter adversaries who are rapidly advancing their air power capabilities. And from Russia's Su-57 stealth platforms to China's J-20 Mighty Dragon jets, the global skies are more contested than ever before. But the United States isn't just keeping up. It's staying ahead by revitalizing the beating hearts of its air arsenal, turning decades-old platforms into fearsome modern weapons of war through the sheer will of innovation and excellence in engine rebuilds. Because when AB-1B Lancer rolls out a hangar with rebuilt JIV-101 engines humming with new life, it's not just launching another sortie. It's showing the world that American might is perpetual, upgraded, and always ready. And let's not forget the massive role these engines play in projecting power over vast distances, from Diego Garcia to Guam, from Al Udeid to Ramstein, because these engines power the global reach of the U.S. military, delivering supplies, troops, and hellfire with precision and reliability. And inside those massive turbofans lie thousands of hours of expert craftsmanship, software fine-tuning, recalibrated pressure modules, and even microscopic inspections of blade tips using quantum-level imaging to ensure that no flaw, no crack, no vulnerability can go undetected. Because in a harsh theater of war, there is no room for error, and when these engines scream across the sky at Mach speeds, their voice is a thunder of deterrence, reminding enemies that America doesn't send warnings, it sends forces, and those forces are backed by engines that have been torn down, rebuilt, tested, and certified for combat. And with every rebuild cycle, engineers are feeding performance data into centralized AI systems that cross-reference engine behavior across thousands of flight hours to generate predictive maintenance schedules long before a fault ever occurs. And this has drastically reduced unscheduled downtime, turning legacy aircraft into dependable, mission-ready war machines that can deploy at a moment's notice. And whether an emergency extraction in hostile territory or a high-altitude bombing run over a fortified target, those missions depend entirely on the engines roaring with flawless precision. Because if the engines fail, the mission fails, and failure is never an option in the U.S. Air Force. And while adversaries try to clone or reverse engineer American propulsion systems, they can't replicate the scale, the doctrine, or the human skill behind these rebuilds. Because this isn't just about engineering. It's about culture, a relentless commitment to perfection, a refusal to accept good enough, and a warrior ethos shared by every technician, every test cell operator, and every logistics coordinator in the engine rebuild chain. And as geopolitical tensions rise, especially in flashpoints like the Taiwan Strait, Eastern Europe and the Persian Gulf. These rebuilt engines are the backbone of American quick reaction capabilities, enabling 24/7 surveillance, deterrence patrols, and strike readiness at levels the world has never seen. And inside command bunkers, generals don't just look at fighter availability. They look at engine status, knowing full well that an aircraft without a certified high-performance engine is just dead weight. And that's why rebuild centers operate like war rooms, with daily briefings, intelligence-driven risk assessments, and classified upgrade programs that continuously enhance thrust output, thermal tolerance, and radar evasion. And while the public only sees a plane flying, insiders know the engine is where the real battle is fought and won. Because every engine rebuilt to spec, fitted with next-gen upgrades, and tested beyond design limits, represents another hammer in the anvil of U.S. military superiority. And this level of rebuild intensity extends even to stealth platforms, where the engines must perform without revealing their heat or sound signatures. And thus every turbine stage is coated with radar-absorbing materials, every nozzle redesigned for vector thrust and thermal masking. And these are engines that not only fly fast and high, but also fly invisible, penetrating enemy defenses before the enemy even knows what hit them. And for special access programs, those black budget birds that operate in complete silence, engine rebuilds happen under layers of compartmentalized secrecy, with mechanics working on isolated engine modules without knowing what aircraft they belong to, and tests stand results encrypted and routed through secure, though deep pathways that only a few insiders can decrypt. Because when you're rebuilding an engine that powers a platform no nation is supposed to know exists, you don't just follow protocol. You write it from scratch, and these engines, cloaked in silence, enable missions in denied airspace, in orbit, and perhaps even beyond. But let's bring it back down to the deck, where C-130s and C-5MS are lifting entire command posts into war zones, powered by rebuilt turboprops and turbofans that have survived decades of combat, and still come back for more, because these engines are more than parts. They are living legacies of airmen who flew them in Vietnam, maintained them in desert, storm, and now entrust them to the next generation of warriors. And that generational handoff is no small thing, as every rebuild carries forward the DNA of American aerospace dominance, from the first jet-powered bomber to the next hypersonic strike system. And while China and Russia invest billions in flashy prototypes, the U.S. quietly turns old iron into lethal steel, upgrading internals while retaining proven airframes, creating hybrids of heritage and future capability that adversaries can't anticipate and can't match. And every time an airman hears that engine roar, they know they're hearing the sound of American resolve, American ingenuity, and American promise. Because behind that roar lies thousands of hours of calibration, miles of wiring, oceans of data, and generations of sacrifice. And so long as these engines fly, the mission never stops, the defense never sleeps, and freedom never yields. And in this rebuilding, this quiet resurrection of raw power, we find the very core of what it means to dominate the skies, to hold the line, and to push beyond it. As the final bolts are tightened, the exhaust nozzles aligned, and the engines rolled out from the test bays with a fresh coat of thermal-resistant paint gleaming under hangar lights, the magnitude of the mission becomes clear. This isn't just about restoring metal and fuel lines. It's about reigniting the very soul of American air superiority. Because every rebuilt jet engine is a symbol that America doesn't retire power. It refines it, upgrades it, and redeploys it with vengeance. And the scale of this rebirth is staggering, with engine overhaul centers running 24/7 across the country, from Hill Air Force Base in Utah to Warner Robins in Georgia, with thousands of civilian technicians, Air Force engineers, and defense contractors working shoulder to shoulder to bring these roaring giants back to life. And the process doesn't end when the engine passes its final test. It continues into the field, where maintainers, flight crews, and mission planners depend on its reliability in the most unforgiving environments on Earth. Because whether you're flying at 30,000 feet over the Pacific or hugging terrain at 500 knots in enemy territory, your fate is locked to that engine performance. And that's why the rebuild process includes rigorous flight simulation data, heat distortion modeling, 3D printed prototype testing, and even metallurgical stress testing that simulates what the engine would endure in a high-G evasive maneuver under missile fire. And when you realize that The jet engines rebuilt today are the same ones powering strategic bombers capable of launching nuclear payloads, or stealth jets that infiltrate hostile airspace before a radar even blinks, or tankers that fuel the entire air campaign from above the battlefield. You begin to understand that these aren't just parts. They are pillars of national defense. And perhaps nowhere is this clearer than on forward-deployed airstrips carved out in the desert, in the Arctic, or aboard U.S. Navy carriers, where rebuilt engines are installed, fired up, and launched into active ops within days of arrival, giving U.S. commanders the ability to surge air power anywhere on the planet at a moment's notice. And that is a capability no other nation can match, because only America has built the infrastructure, trained the personnel, and invested the time to create this global engine rebirth network, where decades-old platforms can rise from the ashes and return to battle stronger, faster, and deadlier than ever. And let's not forget how this engine rebuild strategy fits into broader U.S. military doctrine, because while adversaries pour billions into building new fleets from scratch, the U.S. leverages its existing arsenal, massive, tested, lethal, by rebuilding its core propulsion systems, turning old workhorses like the F-15, F-16, A-10, and B-52 into upgraded monsters with longer range, better fuel efficiency, higher thrust-to-weight ratios, and advanced engine control systems integrated with AI for predictive analytics. And that means when a crisis flares up, U.S. forces don't wait for new toys. They unleash upgraded legends from day one. And those legends are only possible because someone, somewhere, tore down a jet engine piece by piece, cleaned every turbine blade, scanned every shaft for microfractures, replaced the combustion chamber seals, ran a vibration test, adjusted the digital engine controls, and did it all with the precision of a surgeon and the pride of a patriot. And in many ways, it's those unsung rebuilders, the men and women in coveralls, grease on their hands, eyes locked on specs, who ensure American jets can fly further, fight harder, and win faster. And it's this quiet mastery, this invisible force of readiness, that truly gives the United States air supremacy in the 21st century and beyond, because the war for dominance isn't just fought in the skies. It's fought in test bays, in hangars, in digital labs, and on inspection tables where tomorrow's victories are born today through sheer technical brilliance and unwavering commitment. And as we look to the future, towards sixth-generation fighters, hypersonic drones, and AI-augmented squadrons, engine rebuilds will only grow more vital, evolving from mechanical overhauls to multi-domain re-engineering projects where propulsion, electronics, stealth, and cyber defense intersect in a single unit. And those who master the art of rebuilding will not just maintain power, they will define it, because the next conflict will not be won by the newest jet alone, but by the one that can stay in the air longest, hit hardest, and return safely. And that requires engines that are more than powerful. They must be perfect, and perfection only comes from relentless discipline, tested doctrine, and a national will to remain unchallenged in the skies. And that is what America has and always will have. So the next time you hear the deafening thunder of an F-22 streaking overhead, or feel the low rumble of a B-52 shaking the earth below, remember this: that engine was once a pile of parts, cold and lifeless, until American hands rebuilt it with excellence, with urgency, and with fire, so that when the time came, it would not hesitate. It would dominate. And in that roar, you are hearing the legacy of the past, the strength of the present, and the promise of the future. Because when the skies call, America answers, and it answers with power reborn, with engines rebuilt, and with force that never backs down.